Come on in. Come on in. All right, I'm good with 4 people. All right, hello everybody. And to the people at home. Right. Today we're going to go over German Expressionism. Well, Germany in the 20s. So German Expressionism is what we're mostly going to talk about today. There's some other artistic styles that we'll discuss, including Kammerspiel. First things first, any questions, concerns about anything coming up? So I know I've said this countless times. So this is for the people at home that I'm talking to. So our first exam, the deadline for the first exam is September 29th at 11:30 p.m. That is the deadline. But I'll be opening up the exam. I believe I put it down for the 27th. September 27th is when I'll open up the exam. You have essentially a week to, so it's probably more than the 27th. So you have essentially a week to complete the exam or to take the exam. 50 multiple choice or 45 to 50 multiple choice questions based on the first 5 chapters. So off the top of my head, it's the invention of cinema or motion picture or whatever, the expansion of cinema, international expansion of cinema, national cinemas, and then what we're going to talk about today, Germany in the 1920s, and then we're going to talk about next class, Soviet montage. So those are the 5 chapters, and of course, if you go onto iCollege, you can see that I've divided up into sections. So you know exactly what you need to study for the exam. Use my study guide or use my notes as a study guide when you're studying for this exam. Don't neglect the book, so don't just say, oh, I don't need to read the book, because a lot of times my notes don't make sense unless you actually read the textbook. But let me say this, there's a lot of information in the textbook, so if I do not cover it in my notes or in my PowerPoint, if you don't see it there and it's in the textbook, it's probably not going to be on the exam. All right, so use my notes as a study guide on where to study. All right. Questions? All right. Let's start with our warm-up question here. What is your favorite restaurant place to eat? What is your favorite restaurant and or place to eat? Today I ate at my favorite place in Atlanta. It's a place, Viva by Camille. I don't know if anyone has heard of this place. It's in the Peachtree Center. I walked over there downtown Atlanta. It's a Mediterranean food, so I got some chicken shawarma with a little bit of tabbouleh, hummus, what else? Some falafels. It was very delicious. I enjoyed it. It was a very good lunch. So that's one of my favorite places in Atlanta. What is your favorite place, restaurant, place to eat, whatever it could be? And we'll start over here. And I need to get to know everybody's names because I see you guys all the time, and I still do not remember your names. But up first. As always. You remind me your name. I'm so sorry.
Kinsey.
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 Kinsey. Am I going to remember that? Oh, that's so horrible. Kinsey, what is your favorite place to eat? McDonald's, right? Mickey D's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. That's what you say.
That's my go-to right now.
What do you get at McDonald's?
I get a 20-piece chicken nugget, medium fry with a large fry.
Sounds delicious.
I thought you were going to say the Travis Scott burger or something.
I have tried that.
What do you think about the Travis Scott burger?
It's kind of bad.
You don't like it. You don't enjoy it. No, thank you. What about the McRib? You okay with the McRib? Everybody goes crazy with the McRib.
I didn't need.
The McRib. You know their famous sandwich that they.
No, I haven't tried that.
You haven't tried that? It's not good.
It's not good. I haven't tried it. No.
It's not good.
Travis Scott
McRib.
wasn't that good.
I mean, it's fine. But yes. So McDonald's. Usually get a Sprite, a large Sprite.
A large fry. It's $1. They're all the same, but like it's $1 for a large fry.
Sounds very good. I like it. Kinsey.
Yes, sir.
Yes. All right. Up next, and yes, I forgot your name too. I'm so sorry. Eddie. That's easy. Eddie. Okay. Kinsey and Eddie. All right, Eddie. Where's your favorite place to eat?
I'm gonna say IHOP only because I love breakfast food.
International House of Pancakes. So they changed their name to the International House of Burgers. Is that correct? Did they change it back? Did they commit to that?
They changed it back.
So
They
their
changed it
name was
back.
IHOP or like B, like I.
IHOP, yeah. So what is your go-to order at IHOP?
It's either like pancakes, eggs, and bacon, or waffles, basically.
What kind of syrup do you put on there? A little maple?
Regular.
Regular, classic, no need to get fancy.
Yeah.
What about chocolate chips? Put chocolate chips on your pancakes?
Sometimes.
Sometimes he likes to be a little dangerous.
A little
Crazy.
bit, sure, right? And a little bit of sweet tooth going on. What do you drink for a beverage?
Apple juice.
Apple juice. Sounds good. Excellent. What about coffee? You okay with a coffee?
I'm not a coffee.
What about a pumpkin spice? Coffee?
We were talking about
Kinsey
pumpkin
here.
spice last time.
Delicious. Up next, and remind me your name. We got Kinsey, we got Eddie.
I'll give you a hint. It's off a famous book, famous character from a book.
I'm not
The Adventures of.
Oliver? No.
No. It's written by Mark Twain.
Finn?
No. The other
Sawyer?
guy. Yeah, Sawyer.
Oh, it is Sawyer.
Yeah, my name's Sawyer.
Excellent. All right, Sawyer, Eddie, Kinsey. Okay, yes.
Ooh, my favorite place to eat? That's. Well, I'm gonna have to say this restaurant called El Jinete. It was up in Gwinnett County. It's a Mexican restaurant. It's probably my favorite place to eat. One, it's really good, and two, my family and I went all the time when we first moved here. Like every
So you
Tuesday.
got memories.
Yeah, I got memories. It's probably why it's my favorite place to eat.
What's your go-to order there at the restaurant there?
I always changed it up, but I always like getting the beef nachos. Those were always pretty good. But then eventually I moved on to enchiladas.
Enchilada. What about tamales? You okay with tamales? What's your opinion on tamales?
Tamales, I think tamales, if they're done by a good chef, are really good.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do like a good tamale. Well, Kinsey, what do you think about tamales? What's your opinion on tamales?
I've never had it tomorrow.
You never had a tamale? Yes, they're
You definitely should.
they're good.
So I gotta really open up, because all I have is McDonald's.
Sure, right? And of course, McDonald's is known for the tamales. But up next, we have, you just told me your
Yeah,
name.
I just told you.
You just told me.
Sasha.
Sasha,
Sasha.
Sawyer, Eddie, Kinsey. All right, Sasha.
My favorite place to eat. I love my mom's food, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I prefer like her food over restaurants, but
That counts. What is her go-to? What does she make very well?
like salmon or like really good chicken
Oh,
or like borscht or something. It's really good.
I cooked a good salmon the other day. I had some salmon. I made some tabbouleh with it. That was very good. I had some
Salmon's
rice.
delicious.
I made some black beans with some garlic black beans. Very good. Very
Any
delicious.
Russian food?
What was that?
Any Russian food?
Russian food. Tell me what is Russian food?
Like borscht, wolf.
No, not familiar. But is that your go-to food there?
Yeah.
What do you drink? What's the beverage of choice?
I just drink water.
Just drink water.
That's smart.
Classic H2O. What's the temperature of your water? Do you like it very cold? Do you like it room temperature? You like a room temp?
No cold water.
You don't like ice? Whoa.
Interesting.
Too harsh on the body.
I can see that, right? So like a really ice cold water can be kind of jarring,
That's just so
especially when you're really thirsty. You just want to drink it up.
It's not settling, not comforting.
Yeah, but it's so refreshing, the coldness when it's hot.
It can be, most
Cold.
certainly. What if it's really cold outside though? Do you want a really cold ice water when it's very cold?
Honestly, yeah, I still take a cold water when it's cold.
Alright, excellent. That sounds good. Alright. Alright, so let's talk about Germany in the 1920s. Not known for their tamales, but let me ask you guys this. Describe the impact of World War I on Germany during this time. We're talking about the 1920s now, so World War I is over. How did it impact Germany? Yes, Eddie.
I have notes for what Germany was like before World War I.
Talk to me.
They were widely insignificant and had a low reputation. I think the word is Otto Renfilm.
Yeah.
Was the author of the film, is what they called it, and it was films that were publicized by famous writers and directors who were hardly mentioned or given credit for.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, we talked about that, and that's definitely something that you should certainly know. But what about now? What about the 1920s after World War I? What's going on?
Basically, their economy did not exist. It went down because the Allies basically broke up all the lands they took. They made them pay for almost a lot of war. What's the word? Retribution? What's the word? Starts with an R. Like when you have to pay someone money for like breaking something rich.
Yes.
Yeah, but basically that's what they had to do.
Retributions.
Yeah, retribution, that's the word. And basically their economy plummeted because of that.
Yeah,
There's
very
a
good.
humongous inflation, and then political instability because the party that was in power at the time was basically gone. Yeah, so they were in chaos for a while.
Yeah, sounds good. So a little history lesson for you. After World War I, Germany loses, obviously, and then the Allies punish Germany pretty severely, actually. So they force Germany to pay for, through the war guilt clause, saying that Germany is at fault and they must pay for the war, right? And Germany was having a very hard time actually making their payments, and their economy just completely tanked to the point where their dollar, their mark, was essentially worthless. I believe the number got to, was it 50,000 to the dollar, right? It was something insane to the point where money was useless, right? Fantastic. What else is going on during this time?
It fell from $6 billion to $5 billion.
Okay, right. So we're talking about hyperinflation, right? So it's the point where the German people are really suffering because their economy is just tanked, right? And you would think that this would have a negative impact on the German film industry, and it actually did not. It actually flourished during this time period, primarily because if your money is worthless, there's no point on holding on to it because it's just going to go down in value, so you spent it. So people went to the theater, right? And this is a time when German films started getting some credibility, and we're going to talk about why they got credibility in terms of German Expressionism. And German Expressionism might be, besides Soviet montage, might be the most influential artistic movement in film history. And the reason why it's so impactful because German Expressionism really played with the idea of lighting and creating unique worlds, fantasy worlds, through set design, through costume design. And we'll show several examples here in a second. So can anyone describe to me what German Expressionism is? What are some of the characteristics? I already kind of gave some away. But what are some characteristics of German Expressionism? Yes?
They're definitely some like fantasy and just kind of like extreme like storytelling.
Yes. You have this outlandish, not realistic,
Yeah.
right? And you have these, I wouldn't say elaborate sets, but you have these fantastical set pieces. You have interesting costumes. The acting itself from the actors is over-exaggerated. A lot of use of shadowing, and we're going to show Nosferatu here in a second. A lot of like repetitive, abstract shapes. You'll see that here. Right. So German Expressionism, in many ways, every horror film to date has been influenced by German Expressionism. And you'll notice it when we show the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. There you go. You'll see what I'm talking about when I say every horror film. Film noir, which we'll be talking about later on, was heavily inspired by German Expressionism. All right, I kind of answered the other questions. So what I would like to do is I want to actually show an extended clip from Nosferatu. Does anyone know what Nosferatu is? That's arguably the first vampire film ever made, right? We're going to show an extended clip, and I want you to put your film analysis caps on, right? I want you to think about this. Well, try to point out the characteristics that make this a German Expressionism film. Or if you just want to talk about some of the things you liked, or some of the things you didn't like, right? Just want to create a conversation here. But this is a clip from Murnau's Nosferatu. I'm sure you recognize these imagery, the very iconic imagery in here. But here we go. All right, so let's talk about this for a second. First of all, let's just start off with some things that uh, caught your eye, things that you noticed, things that you liked, you didn't like. Yes, Eddie, go for it.
I noticed one thing, or why I recognize the name that you said is because he was in an episode of
I was
SpongeBob.
about to say.
Is it SpongeBob, you said?
He was in an
Yeah.
episode of SpongeBob, and I never knew what that scene in SpongeBob was about. And I guess it was from this.
Nice.
And the color scheme from this actual film, I've noticed, I guess the red is supposed to represent like him sucking the blood. Yellow was supposed to represent the daytime when the cop ran in. And I'm not too sure about blue in this scenario.
Right, so yeah, you could definitely point out that. More practically speaking, right, and I'm sure there's a symbolic, but if you want to talk about how the darker colors indicate that's nighttime, right, and then when the rooster crows, it's dawn, and considering he's a vampire, that's why he dies, right, because she tricks him into coming out to get her, and then it's daytime, and then he dies from the sun. Right. So the red sort of is like this indicating of the dawn, perhaps. But yeah, great. What else are we noticing? Yes, Sawyer.
It's how they use the lighting. So they use the lighting to. They basically had the creature mostly in shadow or darkness, or sometimes you only saw the shadow. And I think they used it to instill fear
Mhm.
into the audience, because a lot of times your imagination is honestly more like what you come up with in your mind is more fearful than anything you can see on screen.
Yeah, and the imagery. This is far more. Obviously, we're sort of numb to the things that we watch when we watch horror films today. But let me see if I can find it. But the all the imagery where it's just his shadow. That's far more terrifying than actually seeing his face. I'm not gonna be able to find it. Anyways, there he is. There's Nosferatu. But yeah, so the use of shadow. I'm sure many of you have seen that scene before, where it's just his shadow walking. Maybe not. I don't know if is anyone. Yeah. Moving on. So what else? What are some other things that we noticed from this? Yes.
There's like parallel editing throughout it.
Yeah, great. A great example of parallel editing and it's almost creating a little bit of suspense. By today's standard, not a lot of suspense, but you can certainly see how the parallel editing is sort of creating this suspenseful atmosphere where you're continually going back between these two scenes, which we assume are happening at the same time. Certainly, yes. Ken, say you got something?
Only real things that I point out from this was pretty much already stated. The tensing, the fact that I've seen the character already on SpongeBob. I've seen it was something related to him like flicking the lights on and
Yeah,
off.
I was wondering.
And I don't just so yeah, that's what
All right, we have to watch this SpongeBob thing. Wait, not that. SpongeBob, yes, SquarePants. Nosferatu. Okay, here we go.
Yep.
Wait for it. It's thing. Oh, look, it's
There he goes.
Kid, I was so confused on what the
Is
hell
this it right here?
Yeah, it was kind of scary.
I think that's go back up.
SpongeBob and Squidward work to the night shift.
Oh,
There's that clip right
Those are
there.
the ones
is
that's
this
on.
it?
Yeah.
Can I have a job application? I brought my own spatula. I called earlier, but I hung up because I was nervous. Do you have references?
Why? If that was you on a phone and you on a bus, who was flickering the lights?
Oh, okay, there you go.
Now I finally know what that
Excellent.
means.
Yeah, I never knew what it meant.
All right. We sort of talked about this, but I'll go ahead and hit all the highlights once again. So Germany loses World War I. They're severely punished. They have to pay reparations for the war. Unable to really pay, so their economy sort of tanks. Germany, which was at the height of its power before the war, is down below. Obviously, you have an economic depression going on, but you also have sort of this like societal, cultural depression going on as well. Hyperinflation by 1923. Let's talk about some more films. So German Expressionism, the hallmark, the go-to example when you talk about German Expressionism is a film called The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari in 1920. And I want to show several clips from this film. And what I want to do is I'll show some of the clips, and we can talk about what makes this an example of German Expressionism, right? So this is The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. so let's talk about this for a second. So what makes this a German expressionism example? Yes, go ahead.
I think with the font of the intertiles, like with the dialogue.
Okay, yeah, so you got this like creative, like artistic intertiles going on there? Yeah, certainly. Eddie?
The creativeness of the sets and the background, like how the town is supposed to look like it's on a really big hill.
Yeah, so what is that called? What is that term called when it looks like, when it's designed to look like it's far away?
Forced perspective.
Forced perspective, correct. So there's a lot of use of forced perspective here. You have these abstract looking set pieces that are not supposed to replicate real life. It's this fantasy world, right? Yeah. What else makes this German expressionism? Yes?
The over top, like expressions, like their costumes, like their outfits, like they're a little funky, and then
Yeah.
makeup probably.
These elaborate costumes, these unique costumes, and then you have the like the over expressive acting that's going on with this as well. Certainly, yes.
I don't remember if you gave a name for it or not, but how, like, the screen was specifically focused on facial expressions and it has a black circle around it, so that's really cool.
Yeah, you're starting to see like this experimenting with like framing, right? Just like like a practical framing effect. Certainly, yes.
Is there a word for that? Like that black circle that enclosed them?
Other than just like a framing, yeah, I don't know what that, like a transition, perhaps? Yeah. I'm sure there's a word for it. The use of lighting, right? So the use of shadows and lighting. Yeah, the tinting of, yeah, certainly. Right. Let's watch some more of Dr. Caligari. Skipping ahead, skipping ahead.
Is the music like this throughout the whole film?
So that's a great question. Okay, so first of all, whenever we haven't gone to sound yet. So whenever you're watching, when you're listening to the music, this was actually not played during it when this was actual broadcasted, projected, right? So if there was music playing during this, it was either a live band or some other sort of audio technology that would play along with it. This soundtrack, obviously I don't know, but this soundtrack sounds sort of contemporary, so I don't know if it's like a film student who wanted to make a score for this movie. That's what I would assume, although I could not see that. I looked in the comment section, but the music to me sounds very contemporary, so I don't know if this music actually played during, when it was actually projected. Right, good. Spoiler alert, he kills him. That's why he knows he's gonna die. He kills him. Alright, moving on. Is there more that I want to show? Is this fun? Is this a good one?
Discount maker models.
Alright, that's the cabinet of Dr. Caligari, 1920.
Wow.
Alright, so that's German Expressionism. Let's move on to another artistic style, Kammerspiel. This is also very popular in Germany in the 1920s, although this genre, if you want to call it a genre, this type of film is very different than German Expressionism. Some of the more notable differences is the use of camera movement and sort of playing with actually moving the camera around the characters. So in German Expressionism, it was primarily point and shoot, right? Because you had the elaborate sets, you had the costumes, you wanted to highlight the facial expressions. In Kammerspiel, we're playing with conveying messages and feeling through the actual camera movement. And obviously I'll show an example from The Last Laugh. This genre, Kammerspiel, focuses primarily on one character and sort of kind of gets into the weeds with that character's psychological well-being. It usually features someone who's in crisis. So The Last Laugh, for example, is about a man who used to be a hotel worker. He used to work at a hotel, who loses his job, and his life sort of spirals out of control. And when German Expressionism focuses primarily on fantasy elements and horror elements, like these abstract imagery, Kammerspiel focuses primarily on the city and urban life, like modernity, like contemporary German urban life. Usually through focusing on one character and that character's like arc through crisis. So this is an extended clip from The Last Laugh. What I want you to do is I want you to think about what makes this a distinct style from German Expressionism. All right, so what are some things that you noticed? Yeah, Sawyer.
It's definitely there's a lot less shadows for sure.
Okay.
More evenly lit, and there's a lot more camera movement than compared to the GE.
Mm-hmm.
Especially like for example, like when you saw the tremper hole and then it went out.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Yes. Vincent.
Speaking on like the camera movement, I saw a lot of camera angles like used as far as like the pan. They had like a little pan shot going on, like his point of view, like a POV type
Right.
pan, and I forgot what it was. It was like a spin type thing.
Yeah, there's a spin one where he's spinning around with the camera. There's one where it's from the brass instrument all the way up.
Mhm.
There's several POV shots.
Yeah.
There's a lot of superimposing, right? Two different images on top of each other. So what are some messages that are being conveyed simply by the camera movement and the editing? What's being conveyed?
He's losing his mind.
Right, so yeah, we're watching a character sort of in a drunken stupor, right? But also sort of like in this crisis mode of dreaming of a time when his life had more meaning, where he was happier, right? So how does this camera movement convey that? Yes.
Well, I think when he was tossing the suitcase up in the air and all the people around them, he was kind of going around all the people and their happy faces and then him happy and him being the center of attention and everything's joyful. I think that camera movement conveys that because it's showing all that.
Yeah.
Like it makes you feel like you're there, part of it, because it's kind of more eye level. You're going around seeing everybody. It's not just like a wide shot or something like that.
Yeah, very good. So what we're starting to see now is that directors are starting to experiment with the medium rather than just setting up a camera, pointing and shooting. They're starting to experiment with what you can actually do with film. And there are certain things that you can do in film, messages that you can convey, feelings and emotions that you can convey, simply than just from the expressions from the actors. Right? With German Expressionism, it's all about the acting. It's about setting up the atmosphere, the lighting, and the intricate backgrounds and the repetitive shapes. With this type of film, we're talking more about what can I convey about his emotional state simply by spinning the camera around the character. Right? It creates this more intimate, right, emotional feeling towards this character. So once again, so Kammerspiel, we're focusing primarily on one character and his moment, his arc, his storyline through a crisis, right? Versus German Expressionism, we're focusing primarily on, like a fantasy world, a horror film. So you got Kammerspiel, that's focused on like modernity and like a real life scenarios and like this realistic depiction of how depressing life can be, right? Versus German Expressionism, which is this sort of like fantastical way of looking at like this world building sort of thing. Right? So these two modes are drastically different from each other, but both highly influential. And if we want to kind of go deeper into our analysis of this film, remember, so you have this German character who was very happy in a very prestigious job. He was happy with his job, and all of a sudden he loses his job. And he has nothing. Like he's in this he's like in this crisis mode. And if you want to compare that to Germany, right? If you want to use this as a metaphor for the German people, right? So we're kind of diving into Germany's collective cultural psyche right now. They were at one point prestigious and powerful and economically dominant, and all of a sudden They're in this like crisis mode, right? So we're kind of also diving into sort of we can examine Germany's culture through these types of films as well. Very good. So do you understand the difference between Kammerspiel and German Expressionism? Right? Both heavily influential in film history. I want to show a couple examples of some contemporary films, or more recent films that are heavily inspired by German Expressionism. Let's start off first with that's not right. That's not right. How did that happen? Let's do. I'll find you. Where are you? There we go. This is The Bride of Frankenstein, 1930.
Please talk with diffuser. Remove diffuser lens. She's alive! Alive!
So where's the German Expressionism influence here? What are we noticing? Yes.
The over exaggeration in the acting.
Yeah, right. Oh, exaggeration in the acting. What else?
The elaborate set.
The elaborate set, like the kind of like the oddity of the set too, right? So you have these weird contraptions, these large brackets right here. I always found this kind of interesting. These brackets that they're removing. I didn't realize it's all the way back over here. But like realistically speaking, is this necessary? These weird brackets here. Just like you can start seeing the use of shadows and intricate lighting system. Yeah, sure. So that was Bride of Frankenstein. A more contemporary example from my childhood, Batman Returns, 1992. Has anyone seen this film? The more and more that I get older, the less students have seen this film. So back before Heath Ledger and The Dark Knight, there was a series of films, Batman films, Batman Returns. But yeah, so this is from Batman Returns, 1992. Heavily influenced by German Expressionism. Christopher Walken.
I'm no cat. I'm just an assistant. A secretary.
A very good one.
Too good? Listen, it's our secret. Honest. How can you be so mean to someone so meaningless?
This power plant is my legacy. It's a million behind. For Chip, nothing must prevent that.
Okay. Go ahead. Intimidate me. Bully me if it makes you feel big. I mean, it's not like you can just kill me.
Actually, it's a lot like that. Huh?
You know, for a second there, you really frightened me.
You notice any influences here?
I noticed that the lighting on the bottom right corner is obviously being shined, and it's not like a room, even though it should be.
Okay.
To get that like shadow of the cat.
You ever seen some shadows here? Maybe like a Nosferatu inspired shadow going on here? The eye opening kind of sort of reminds you of the cabinet of Dr. Caligari a little bit, right? The like the elaborate costume here and the weird hair wig, right? Sort of like the Caligari a little bit. He almost has that costume. Right? Tim Burton, I mean, it's well known that he's heavily inspired or influenced by German Expressionism. Yeah. There's a contemporary Batman Returns, 1990. All right. What else? Okay. All right. So, what are the primary differences between Kammerspiel and German Expressionism? How would you define? Sawyer.
Oh, it's just stretching.
Oh, stretch it out. Sometimes you just gotta stretch it out.
I mean, I can answer for all.
Kensei, what do you got? Tell me something. How would you describe German Expressionism? Let's go with that.
I would describe it as basically, like put it into some words, like basically like explain it as like kind of like revolutionary in a way, like it's set in stone. I mean, you in the 1920s, that's a part of the whole entire movement of change, and you can definitely kind of see change in film around this time.
Yes, certainly. Give me some characteristics. Eddie.
Over the top acting, new directing with the camera angles, different use of lighting, costumes, crazy design costumes.
That's good. Sasha.
There's a lot of like point and shoot stuff, so like nothing crazy with the camera, but a lot of like costumes. They wanted to show like the elaborate set a lot, over the top acting, and just kind of exaggerated, very like fantasy type of stuff.
Forced perspective, right, with the background, the sets, right? And Kammerspiel is different because what's different about Kammerspiel? Yes.
Kammerspiel is honestly, it's more set in reality, not really fantasy. More focuses on German life at the time. Has a lot more camera movement. I'm experimenting with that. Lighting is more evenly lit. There isn't as many shadows as there is in German Expressionism.
Okay. Yeah, very good. I like it. So next class, when I see you guys next, we're going to talk about Soviet montage, another very influential artistic movement. So montage is essentially editing. Think about editing, the use of editing and changing from scene to scene, the camera angle and everything to convey messages, right? All right. That's it for today. I will see you next time.
Are you like a review class at all?
I will not.
Okay.
But yeah. I'll see you